The Florida Podcast Network, the voice of Florida.
This is Gerard with episode number 8 of Florida's Fresh Mix on the Florida Podcast Network, a random mix of Florida's freshest personalities. This episode is brought to you by our amazing equipment sponsor, Mainline Marketing. Listen in.
Hi there, this is Amber, the production assistant for the Florida Podcast Network, and I'm here with your host, Gerard. And as always, I'm super thrilled for another great conversation because today's guest is Josh Zepess, the Identity Archaeologist. Now, Gerard, I'm really glad you opened this conversation by asking Josh, what exactly is an Identity Archaeologist? Because when I was going to pre-interview Josh, I wanted to do some research on him just so I somewhat know what I'm talking about. And I tried Googling the term Identity Archaeologist, and I didn't really find a clear-cut definition. So he's pretty unique, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, he's clearly carved his own path and created his own niche, and I'll leave it up to him to explain what an identity archaeologist is.
I gotta say, this is definitely one of the most thought-provoking episodes we've had so far. I mean, Josh just really makes you think introspectively about who you are, what do you want, what's your why, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, is he a life coach? Is he a consultant? He's kind of the best mix of all those things and really teaches you how to exploit yourself, a recurring theme in some of these episodes about, you know, finding what you love and figuring out how to do that.
It's funny that, you know, you were saying, is he like a life coach or a life consultant? Or I think in the actual interview, you said, like, are you a guru? And just a little spoiler, listener, he says something like, I'm all of those things, but I'm none of those things. So
right.
That just gives you the gist of his vibe. But after the interview, I remember we were all just like sitting there. I felt like we all were just hit with this huge wave of wisdom. He gets deep, not going to lie.
Yep, no doubt. I think it's pretty much impossible to listen to this interview and not get something very valuable from it. It will leave you pondering your existence.
Yeah, actually, like I totally agree. And just hearing his backstory of how he got to the place where he is today, I think a lot of people will relate to it to some degree, especially if you're in a cubicle of some sort, if that's your profession.
Exactly.
All right. So, listener, it's our sponsor shout out. So, like on the last couple of episodes, you will definitely hear a major difference between Gerard's voice now.
Here again is my voice now.
And Gerard's voice in the interview, which we recorded weeks ago. And I'm again using the same model of microphone that Gerard used for his interview with Josh. So I'm sure you can already tell the difference in sound quality between my mic and Gerard's brand new Shure MV7, provided by our awesome equipment sponsor, Mainline Marketing. The quality of sound from the Shure MV7 is absolutely fantastic, and you will honestly hear how much better Gerard's sound quality has been now in the rest of the show compared to his interview. Okay, well, that's about all I have to say. So let's get right into Gerard's conversation with the identity archaeologist himself, Josh Zepess.
Josh Zepess, how are you today, my man?
I'm doing absolutely amazing, sir.
Actually, I should have said Josh Zepess, the identity archaeologist. You know, most interviews you can easily get away with saying, oh, tell us about your background, how you got here. No, the first thing I want to dive into is what is an identity archaeologist? And before you answer, I'm a corporate attorney. So my clients come to me and they are in a wide range of industries. Some are into tech and I have no idea what they do on the day to day. So I sit down and I ask them, listen, if I am your client, if I'm your customer, what do I need? And what do you do for me? So what I want to ask you is the same two questions. If I were your client, what do I need? And what do you provide to me?
Look, you know those solopreneurs out there, those folks that are trying to be noticed. They're in a crowded industry. They're the lawyers. They're the financial people, the brokers, the trainers. They're in a sea of the sameness. Everyone's saying the same stuff, acting the same way. And they're wondering why they can't attract their ideal client. Because they're literally like a bunch of Waldos. Well, I help these folks discover, articulate, and then monetize their authentic personal brand so they can shine above all that noise blow away their competition, make their competition go poof, and make their ideal prospect go, wow, I want to learn more.
I picked up on a phrase that you used in some of your marketing, which is the lighthouse effect. Perhaps you can explain to me the lighthouse effect? Maybe I can get an even sharper image of what exactly we're talking about here.
Here's what the lighthouse doesn't do. We got to start with that. The lighthouse doesn't call prospects or it doesn't call the ships in distress. It doesn't leave voicemails. It doesn't chase them around. It doesn't bring the ships in for like a steak dinner. The lighthouse just stands there. It stands for security. It stands for safety. It stands for shoreline. It stands for the solution. It stands for the one thing all those distressed ships out in the storm, what they all want at that moment. So the lighthouse effect is, what are you shining? What is that thing that your clients want the most? And are you shining it? Are you letting that out, letting that light out so that they can find you? It's a way to compel prospects towards you as opposed to chase them, convince them, and repel them, which is what most of us do when it comes to networking or trying to find folks. It's just shining and allowing your brand, essentially, which is what your light is. It's your brand. It's your uniqueness, and your ideal prospects, those ships in need, which are your prospects, they will come find you. They will come towards you, and you don't have to go chase them.
I want to really drill down on what an identity archaeologist is. I've never heard this phrase in my life. What is an identity archaeologist? And are you offended by either a description as a life coach or a consultant? I've seen your videos. I've read your materials. Sometimes you come across as a bit of both.
Well, first, I don't get it. I haven't been offended in 16 years by anything. So no offense taken whatsoever.
Life, my friend.
Oh, yeah. And it took a while to get there. And I've got techniques for doing that if anybody's interested. But no, I do all those things. I do all the above, yet I'm none of those things. So identity archaeologist is how I take my genius and I apply it to a basic service, which is brand strategy and messaging. So what I do as identity archaeologist is I dig. The first thing I do with anybody, I sit down and I dig and I dig and I dig. And what I dig with, not my hands or a shovel, I dig with questions. I uncover what's deep inside someone, their genius, their talent, their passions, that thing that is monetizable that they don't even remember is there. They once knew about it, but it got covered up. It got conditioned. We got to discover, I should say, what's going on down there and bring it to the surface. Then once we can bring it to the surface, the next step is actually brushing it off, right? We dust it off, get rid of all that crap conditioning, all the stuff you were told about why you can't do it or why it doesn't make money or how you're not cut out for it. And then we refine it. We polish it until it shines. And this is like your true gift. It shines so bright that your prospects, your clients can't even ignore it. And that's the process that I do to create an authentic personal brand. It's pulling out that true, unique portion of yourself and applying it to your business.
What in your life journey has caused you to be equipped to teach people to go so in depth into what they need to do to make themselves stand out?
Well, honestly, life has, because I've made all the mistakes.
Right.
That's a big part of it. So I started even before corporate America.
Another big part.
Oh, absolutely. I failed way more times than I've succeeded. Way more times. And I'm almost proud of it. People think failure and success are opposites. They're not. Success is just on the other side of failure. If you're not going towards failure, you're not going towards success either. And that's just one of the stupid myths that they teach you in school. Failure is bad. Oh, no, not really. Giving up is bad, right? Giving up is one thing. So I started off my life as a soldier. I was the good soldier. I did everything I was told to do. I went to school, got the degrees, got the safe, secure job, put into my 401k. I did it all, but I was told to do it. And then one day, everything I thought was right wasn't so right. I just rebelled. I was like, nope, I am not believing this crap anymore. I know it's wrong. I know I've been lied to. And so then I escaped. I escaped too early. I got into entrepreneurship and I didn't know what I was doing. So I made all the mistakes. I screwed all the stuff up. And maybe that was what I had to go through to get to where I'm at now. And that's fine. But I don't want to see other people do that. Everything I do is to help people become successful in entrepreneurship. I would like them to bring their value to the world and not just do it for money, not just do it as a business, but to shine. It just goes to my bigger vision in life.
Your mentality really speaks to me, and it would speak to my entire family, I think, because we all have a very entrepreneurial spirit. But as immigrants from Haiti, we got the education, we got the job. Our dad, worked for many good companies, but he always had an entrepreneurial spirit and did things on the side. And I think that's where my sister and I got it from. As a matter of fact, my sister, her first podcast was called Curve the Cube, which was about getting out of the cubicle, finding a way to either work part-time or as a solopreneur, doing what you love. And so she interviewed like over 100 people about how did they end up doing what they love. The thing is, it's very scary. So you were 20 years doing the same thing. How did you have the courage to break out of that? And how long did it take for you to finally pull the Band-Aid off?
Yeah, so I spent 20 years in corporate America. And here's the funny part. I climbed the ladder and I was successful. At the end of my career, I was multi six-figure stock options. It wasn't like I had a terrible experience, but the shock of my life was that 401k when I found out that not only was it not going to work mathematically, which, yeah, that made me mad, but what pissed me off, this is what really pissed me off, when I found out it wasn't supposed to work. By design, it was never supposed to be a retirement plan when it was founded in the late 70s, and it wasn't supposed to work, especially by itself as a means of retirement. And I wasn't supposed to know this, by the way, until it was too late. Nobody was going to tell me. It wasn't like, oh, look, we created this thing. It didn't work. Everyone was hush-hush about it. The industry didn't want me to know, but I found out. And it scared me so much. You say I was courageous, but honestly, I was so pissed off and so scared that I could have been sitting in that cubicle for 30 more years and then found out it was too late to do anything about it. I was like, all right, I got to figure out what's going on in life. I started opening up all the cabinet doors. What else don't I know? What else was I lied to about? And that's when I got into entrepreneurship and I got into mindset, and I just became a personal development addict. I was reading everything. I was trying to figure out, what do successful people do? How do they think? And my entire world changed. I would say the best analogy is I saw the Matrix, right? I was able to see the code in the Matrix. And once you could see the code in the Matrix and you see the glitches, you can't sit there anymore. You can't. You know too much. You can't unring that bell. So I had to get out.
We were talking about courage before, the courage to break out. And people are so afraid of failing in order to pursue what makes them happy. And it's a challenge, undoubtedly, but you had the courage to do it. I've always felt like when it comes to failure, why don't we just flip it? I want people to be more like you, the way you expressed it, which is fail as many times as necessary, but don't give up. Because if people just brag about failure and be proud of their failures rather than have it be a scarlet letter, then the mentality for a lot of these endeavors could completely change. So how do you convince people that failure is okay?
There's a few different ways. I'll share something slick with you. I'll bust the myth that failure even exists. And I call it slick on purpose. So SL, little I, capital Q. If you try anything, you can succeed. That's not failure. You can succeed, right? That's awesome. Wonderful. Right. You can not succeed, which means L, you learn. You can learn. That's not failure. If you learn something, you haven't failed. You just learned how not to do it. You learned, you gain experience and knowledge and wisdom. So you can succeed, you can learn, or you can quit, which is Q. Now, if you quit something, if you're no longer even trying, are you failing at it? Of course not. You can't fail at something you're not doing. See, failure is a made-up concept. Failure is something that really, truly, if you think about it, doesn't exist. You're either succeeding at something, you're learning at it, or you've quit it, which means you're not even doing it.
Interesting.
I'll challenge the assertion that people are even afraid of failing, in the classic sense of failing. I don't think we're afraid of failure. I think we're afraid of success. That's what scares the crap out of us, not failure.
Please elaborate.
So if you look at the spectrum, okay, of failure versus success, like abject failure to unbelievable success. If I pick any metric like finances, where are most people? Most people are not near success. If you look statistically, most people are one missed mortgage payment away from out of their house. They're one pink slip away from being on the streets because they lost their job. We're not in a very good position financially, health-wise. 2/3 of the country is overweight. A third is obese. We're like flirting with failure constantly in our lives, most folks. So you can't really be afraid of a place where you are. Here's what we're truly afraid of. Success demands that we keep going. Once we start pedaling that bike, once we get momentum, success demands we have to keep pedaling. We have to keep going. And we worry that what if we go too fast and we crash? There's no coasting. So it's almost easier not to try. It's almost easier just to avoid going big, going for a big dream or a big goal or a big business. than it is to go, because what if I do get a few clients? Now I've got to work harder, and then I get a few more clients. Now I have all these extra responsibility. It's almost like we don't have enough self-belief, unfortunately, growing up. It gets kind of beaten out of us that we're kind of afraid of too much success. It sounds strange because we always talk about success, but it requires a level of self-belief and self-worth that a lot of us just don't have. And so it's just easier just to kind of shirk our greatness, keep our heads down, get that little safe, secure job that's neither safe nor secure, and just kind of tiptoe through life, hoping to make it safely to death.
How do you convince the person who has a family and bills to pay every month, they're fighting for something greater than themselves? How do you convince them to take certain risks and potentially putting the people that they love at risk?
When we decide not to do something, we decide not to go big. I'm not going to start that business. It's too risky. Mm-hmm. A lot of times we forget to look at the other side of the coin. What's the risk of not taking action?
Right.
What's the risk of staying at a job that they can lay you off tomorrow? You could be done. What do you do? What's your spare? I always ask people, like, you have a spare tire in your car? And they're like, yeah, of course. Well, why do you have a spare tire? Well, in case something happens. So then I ask them, all right, what's your spare source of income? If you get laid off tomorrow, what happens? Well, okay. So what's the risk of staying where you are? And I think a lot of folks don't look at that. What's the risk of not starting a business? And then once we're at that point, we're like, okay, you're right. It's too risky to stay where I am. I don't have control over anything. I don't have control over the economy or my boss or the company. Now, you don't have to quit everything and jump into entrepreneurship. I never suggest that. But in the meantime, let's go start something different. Let's go start something on the side that you own, that you're in control over. And it's a process. So there's a transition period where it takes a little bit extra work. It's going to take some time away from family. But if you're doing it for the right reasons, if you're doing it so ultimately you can provide for your family. Look, I've never met a business owner that fired themselves. Like, if you really want control, you've got to build something for yourself. And then if you can do it in a way that uses your genius, which means it's your natural talent and it's your passion, now it becomes easy. Now making money is not as hard as you think.
I just picked up on the fact that's the second time you've used the word genius, and you're using it in an interesting way. I firmly believe that everyone has something that they're exceptional at. It's just a question of whether or not they discover it and tap into it and exploit it. And also, you call yourself a genius. So, look, it's no secret to the audience that I went to Harvard and Columbia Law. I went to school with people I would consider geniuses. I have specifically said that I am not a genius. I'm just a very smart dude. I went to school with geniuses, but I'm starting to kind of rethink my definition based on what you're saying. So when you use the word genius, what exactly do you mean?
Good question. So I use it in terms of everyone has a genius. In other words, a natural talent, something that you do better than everyone else, something I can wake you up 3 o'clock in the morning and out of a deep sleep and you can do it. In fact, here's my favorite definition. Something that when you tell people about it, you almost have to intentionally humble yourself. Otherwise, it's going to sound like you're bragging. Like that. Wow. And it doesn't have to be business related. That's where people get really wrapped around the axle. I don't have some genius for accounting or being a lawyer or law. Or like one of my geniuses is speed eating. It's disgusting almost how fast I eat. I don't compete in it. I think it's gross. I am ashamed by it almost, but I can do it. And I have to recognize it as a genius.
In what circumstance do you find yourself speed eating like a genius?
Every time I eat, I can't even control it. It's so much of a genius. I've made servers cry in restaurants. Like they bring me the food and they go back to get the ketchup or something like that for someone else at the table. And they come back and my food's gone. And they're like, they're confused. Yeah. And I shouldn't. I know it's not healthy. Like, see, this is what it is about a genius. You're almost compelled to do it. You can't help yourself. It's so in your nature. But if you can recognize your genius, and you can find a way to apply it, oh my goodness.
Apply it and monetize it, ideally, right?
Yes, of course.
I think that first you have to find your passion and what you're really good at, and hopefully they're the same thing. And then you have to find out how to monetize it. And, correct me if you think I'm wrong, but with technology these days, not only can you find ways to make money in ways that we couldn't even conceive of before, but technology also allows us to find creative ways to budget our times that we can create the time to do things on the side that we're really passionate about while we've, got our regular job on the side.
You're 100% right. And I believe everything is monetizable. Maybe you're not old enough to remember the pet rock, but some guy you painted faces on a rock.
I remember that. I'm older than you think.
Look, so everything, I promise, everything is monetizable. But there's three areas that if you can play in any one of these areas, you're going to have a pretty successful, quote unquote, like however you want to define success, successful life. And one is passion. The other is skill. And then the other is genius. If you can play in passion, if you could just do your passion all day long, even if you suck at it, you have no skill and you have no genius for it, look, you could have a wonderful life. Or if you work in your skill, if you're highly skilled at something, you're a skilled orator and you're a lawyer and you're skilled at law and you just get it. Maybe it's not your genius, maybe it's not your passion, but you can have a nice career with that. And same thing with genius. If you just follow your genius, like Albert Einstein, he just saw things that other people couldn't see in his mind. And he was able to share that and put that to good use. So if you could play in any one of those areas, you're doing fantastic. Now, if you can combine two of those areas, holy moly, I call that a 1%er. You know what happens when you combine genius and passion? I call that flow. You're in the zone. When you're doing what you love and it's almost autonomous, like you don't even have to think about it, you're in the zone, you're in the flow.
Right.
So if you combine passion with skill, I call that joy. When you're highly skilled at something, you've worked hard at building this competence and you add passion to it, you're applying it to something you love, that's just pure joy.
Do you know what it's called when you make money doing what you love in this way? It's called hustle and flow.
There you go. That's good. And I'm assuming you're making money in all these scenarios, but yeah.
little movie reference there. I want to ask you some specific things about you and your personality that stood out to me. On the one hand, you say that you're an introvert by nature, but at the same time, you say that you're sarcastic and you love satire and inappropriate humor. I mean, I think you and I need to go out and have a beer because I'm exactly the same way, except I am not an introvert at all. So how do you reconcile the fact that you're a self-proclaimed introvert and yet you've got the type of wit that intrigues me?
I am a semi-professional comedian, not the funny kind, though. I'm not the funny kind of comedian. When I say semi-professional, I mean, I'm the one that thinks I'm a comedian. No one else seems to. So that's the semi.
Well, that
was pretty funny. I'm a severe introvert. And I believe most people, in fact, vast majority, are only conditionally introverted. You can take the little engineer in the corner working on his circuit board and just ask him a question about the circuit board, and he will go on for 3 hours, or she. So I think it's all conditional introversion. But when I say I'm introverted, what that really means is I have a switch. I can turn it on. I can dance. I can do comedy. I can share information, teach, and mentor. But then at the end of the day, I got to turn it off and I have to regenerate. I don't want to go to social parties. I can't keep it on forever. And that's what introverts have to do. Where extroverts just have this endless supply of energy. They're amazing. Like, they're just like life of the party, go. That's not me.
Your values and standards also stood out to me, namely honesty. And I think it was the first one you listed. Mm-hmm. Honesty is the only answer all the time. I love that. Anyone that was raised in my household loves that because that was always the number one rule in our house. No lying. And I feel sometimes that when I tell people that, I'm shocked that they think that that's somehow special or exceptional. And you know, everyone's told not to lie, but I think they see it's strange that it was so drilled into our heads that lying is the worst possible thing you can do. What makes that stand out for you is like the number one principle that you wanted to promote?
For one, I had really good mentors that always wanted the bad news first. Because we're ashamed, you know, we don't want to always share the bad news, or we're worried what are people going to think. And we're humans. It's okay to screw up. We're not supposed to be perfect. People lie because they want to hide imperfection, but don't. That's part of my business now. I don't do business brands. I refuse to, because most of them lie. Most of them start with a product and like, okay, create a brand around this product. I don't want to do that. I only work with people, and they have to be authentic people. If they're not authentic, if you're just trying to like sell ice to Eskimos and you just want a clever tagline, go find someone else. I'm not interested. I want to bring out your authenticity because that's truly what's honest. That's where business is going. People want to know why you care. They want to know who you are, and they want to know what you stand for before they care anything about your product, your service, or what you know. The catch is, if you're honest with yourself and you're honest with others, it requires you to keep growing. It requires personal development. And
Very
I think
true.
that's what scares people too. Because, yeah, you're not perfect, but you need to work on those imperfections. But if you're honest with yourself, you got to keep getting better and you got to pedal the bike. See, we're getting back to success now. You got to keep pedaling. Success is not a destination. It's a process. It's a state of being, just like happiness. And you just have to keep going. But that's the meaning of life, not to sit in failure, not to sit and pretend it's going to work out in the end, because it won't.
And I also think that honesty is about building up a reservoir of goodwill. And when people know that your word is your bond, whether it's business or in your personal relationships, they will give you a little leeway. That one time that you say, hey, look, honestly, I need a little more time, or I made a mistake, I'm sorry. You have no idea how far that will go. But you break that trust one time, it's over.
You're talking about integrity when your word and your actions are integrous.
Right.
That's where that word comes from. And being human is actually a very attractive quality, even in marketing and sales, but we're taught to hide our humanity. We're told emotions and business don't mix. You've heard that before?
Right.
Bull crap. That's freaking baloney. Like, you better get emotional about success. You better be human. It's okay.
Another tenet that you mentioned in your values and standards was, if it's meant to be, it's up to me. And that also resonated with me, because it reminds me of something that I wrote about on my blog maybe a year or two ago, which is help God help you. It's like, I know what you said wasn't, religious, but it's basically the same message, which is you have to do it yourself. It starts with you. Tell me a little bit about your feelings on that. If it's meant to be, it's up to me.
Well, I believe everything is in my control. People have different names for God or Jesus or whoever, but at the end of the day, we all come from the same source. And I believe that's a source of greatness, and that we do have the power. We do have the ability to control what's in our life. And when I left corporate America, what I said to myself, and to my wife, I said, we're going to win in life or we're going to lose in life, I just want it to be my fault. I don't even care what the outcome is. I just want to know that I was at the driver's seat and it wasn't up to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
And not everything is my fault, but everything is my responsibility.
I like that. On a completely separate note, before we wrap up, I have to ask you, what do you mean by racing obstacle courses? What does that mean?
Have you ever seen American Ninja Warrior?
I've seen clips of it. I've been told I would love this show. I understand the concept. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're just climbing over walls and monkey bars and doing all kinds of crazy things. So I hate running. I would say I abhor running. That's how much I hate it. So because I abhor running, but I know I need to do it, it's just part of staying healthy, I decided to do obstacle course racing, which is basically running. It's like running a marathon or running a half marathon, but there's obstacles in your way. So every quarter mile, eighth mile, you got to stop and you have to climb a wall. You have to traverse a set of rings, or you have to go through mud. And I just love it because it's so functional and it's so great and it's rewarding at the end of the day.
Are these obstacle courses in Florida?
All over the world. I've done them in Iceland. I was going to go out to Scotland last year to do one, and that got canceled because of COVID.
Before we wrap, I want to ask you, what is the windmill joke that you tell?
So 2 windmills are out in a wind farm, and one turns to the other and says, "What's your favorite kind of music?" And the other replies, "I'm a big metal fan."
Okay, you know what? That's so corny. It's actually funny.
Come on, I'm a big metal fan.
You know what?
It's
clever. No, I got the joke. It's clever. It is a very corny dad joke. And
I could have done the pirate joke. You probably haven't heard the pirate joke, I'm sure.
Go for it.
Well, what's a pirate's favorite letter? Come on.
R.
No, you think it'd be R. It'd actually be the C.
All right. I'm done with you. All right.
Actually, I was just kidding. It's not even C. No, I was just kidding. Their actual favorite letter is P, because without it, they just get irate.
Okay, you know what? That joke ended up redeeming itself. I like that. I like that a lot.
There you go. That's a double whammy.
Well played. Well, listen, man. Thank you so much for the interview. What a great interview, and we will certainly be following you. And I hope that people were inspired to look into you and learn more about your story. There's so much we didn't get to touch on here. Let me ask you: do you have any events or anything else coming up that you want to promote?
Yeah, I have a mission actually that I'm on right now. I'm on a personal mission. I challenged myself at the beginning of March to help 100 solopreneurs answer the question, what do you do? So when they're out there networking, they how to answer that question persuasively, effectively, in a compelling way.
How are you going to go about doing this?
I've already been doing it. I'm in the 70s right now, so I got about 20 more spots that I've opened up for free. And I do it as a half an hour conversation where I ask all the right questions. I get to learn about the person I'm talking to, and they get to watch me do my magic real time. And they walk away with a business asset now that they will use for the rest of their life.
Where else can people catch you and follow you on social media or otherwise?
JoshZepess.com, all under my name, Josh Zepess. And I promise there's no one else has my name. I'm the only Josh Zepess in the world.
Well, thank you so much, and hope to hear from you again soon.
Absolutely. And thank you as well. I had a fun time. I appreciate it. Hopefully I did add some value. And if anyone took away just one single nugget of all the stuff we talked about, then this was a success.
Wow, what an inspiring interview with Josh. And once again, I have to give a shout out to my sister and her 100+ episode podcast called Curve the Cube, which was exactly about this specific topic, finding your passion, etc. So definitely check that out. If you like what you heard with Josh Zepess, there's a lot more where that came from in the Curve the Cube podcast. But I'm going to take a little bit of host license here. My fresh take is really two things, but they're so intertwined. I think it makes sense to talk about both of them. One is failure, and one is finding your God-given talent and exploiting it. I thought it was very, very mind-bending when he said, if you're not going towards failure, you're not going towards success either. And what I've told people so many times is very few people reach success without failing. I've definitely tried things and I failed. And at the end of the day, you learn from those experiences, blah, blah, blah. I'm sure you've heard all of this before, but it is so true. Josh took it a step further and talked about how failure doesn't even exist. He talks about the SLIQ method, which is SLI, lowercase I, Q, success, learn, or quit. When he was discussing people being afraid of success, I think that there's some validity to that. My last name is Legagneur, which in French means the winner. Yeah, that's a lot of pressure when your last name literally means the winner. So you can't be a loser, right? So there's so much pressure, particularly in this country. That's so focused on capitalism and success, and that's fine. But channel it in a way that's positive and hopefully towards something that you're passionate about. And he talked about combining passion with skill and genius, and that leads to joy. What a beautiful roadmap to a happy life. And his definition of genius was, I thought, extremely thought-provoking. And it kind of reminded me of the interview we did with Zach Hirsch in episode 4, the 19-year-old phenom with the photographic memory, who recognized at a very early age that he has this genius, the photographic memory and making sports predictions, etc. And that's what he does. So there's a lot of interconnectedness between these interviews that I hope that you're recognizing and getting some inspiration from. And the last thing I just wanted to remind you of is his definition of recognizing what your genius is. I thought it was brilliant. He said, something that when you tell people about it, you almost have to intentionally humble yourself. Otherwise, it's going to sound like you're bragging. Wow, that's powerful. That's how you figure out your genius. So let that marinate a little bit, figure out what your genius is, and tune in for the next episode of the Fresh Mix podcast. For details and show notes about today's show and our guests, go to freshmixpodcast.com. I'd really love your feedback, both on today's guest and on my fresh take. The Florida Podcast Network has a closed Facebook group exclusively for super fans of their shows like Florida Fresh Mix. And we all look forward to hanging out with you. Just search for FPF Insiders on Facebook to leave us comments, complain about Florida, like, for instance, how it's not impossible for you to find an alligator in your pool. That's actually a thing. It's actually a non-0% chance that you could find an alligator in your pool. Trust me. And get early scoops, contests, and other special treats. And thank you, as always, to our equipment sponsor, Mainline Marketing. And be sure to visit all the great shows on the Florida Podcast Network. You can find them at floridapodcastnetwork.com. Keep catching Who's Fresh in the Florida Mix with Florida's Fresh Mix podcast.
Flintstone Media has been the digital messaging bedrock of several brands and businesses, serving as a highly resourceful podcast production house and consultancy firm for over 6 years. Visit flintstonemedia.com for podcast samples. From show development and setup through recording and distribution, work with a leader in the industry and add a new podcast to your brand's content offerings. That's flintstonemedia.com.